so much you may even get tired of winning.
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition. It takes a little time.
Welcome to Is It Bad for the Economy, the podcast where we explore whether Trump's policies are helping the economy, hurting, or just a load of hot air. My name's Kobi Tirey, and I'm a Democratic media consultant trying to figure out how the Democratic Party can finally get the credit it deserves for outperforming Republicans on the economy for probably my entire lifetime. And keeping me honest is the anonymous financial practitioner, Banker Bill. We're going to try something a little different this episode. We're going to try to cover multiple topics quickly. It's something we haven't mastered yet, but there are so many things going on. We're going to discuss Kimmel. We're going to discuss a potential shutdown, but let's check in with our BFFs at the Fed. They cut by 1/4 point, Banker Bill. Everybody was expecting it. They said that this proves that the Fed is worried about stagflation. If you want to understand stagflation, the Fed, unemployment, inflation, and how all those things are related, you should go listen to our last episode. Banker Bill did an amazing breakdown that not only explained how all those things are related, but how they're driving Trump's policies. But we actually forgot to use the word stagflation. So Banker Bill, can you just give us a quick definition? And can you let us know whether you think it's right that we're worried about it?
So sure, stagflation is an economic condition where unemployment is high and inflation is also high. We are seeing unemployment rising, inflation in several different measures that we've discussed in the previous episode is not falling in sympathy as much as it was and is flattening out. That is the cause for concern.
So stagflation is we have less money and it's buying us less.
Yeah, as a consumer. You got laid off, and not only are you laid off, but your grocery prices are actually more money.
Is it a worst case scenario in like a depression, recession scenario?
I think it's pretty nasty because ultimately to defeat stagflation in the United States, the United States, through interest rate policy of the Volcker Fed, effectively caused the recession of 1981, raised rates so high that they said, you know what, screw it. There's not going to be any demand. No demand for nothing. And by finally purely killing off all demand, causing that recession, driving unemployment to such a high level, I think it peaked over 10%, that finally killed off inflation.
When people give credit to Biden for the soft landing, are they essentially saying that by letting Powell and the Fed cook, that's exactly the scenario that Biden avoided?
Yeah, I think to an extent. And the criticism of the Powell Fed is that they waited too long to start hiking. In retrospect, they probably should have hiked sooner, but they didn't. And we're not going to be revisionists. I don't want to go back to that.
I'm just trying to underline that we had this problem licked until Trump brought it back.
Look, I've long maintained with you that the Fed's posture has been to cut for some time. Inflation was going in the right direction. It's not going down at the same trend it was a year ago. What changed?
Our newest Fed governor, our newest BFF, Stephen Miran, cast his first vote. Did he turn out to be a well-credentialed, bean-counting number respecter, or is he out and about already acting like a sycophant?
If you back into his estimate for where the federal funds rate is, where he's estimating at year end, that would imply inflation is currently between 0 and 1%. All I'm going to ask is, do you feel that inflation is 0 or 1% in your life?
Finally, we wanted to circle back to the Cook story. I know you've been watching this legal case super closely so that you can prove once and for all that the case is so flimsy that I've been a fool to be worried about it in the first place. You told me there's a big breakthrough. What's going on?
Yeah, so it looks like there is nothing to this, and the entire matter was a witch hunt from the start. So Reuters had reporting, which they then invited other publications to corroborate, right? So it wasn't just them saying it. The head of the FHFA, Bill Pulte, is saying Cook committed mortgage fraud by getting mortgages on secondary homes that were meant for primary residences. Journalists took those allegations seriously, and they can't find an instance in which Cook ever declared her vacation home as anything other than a vacation home. In tax records in Michigan and Georgia, she has never claimed it as a primary residence. She did use boilerplate documentation with her credit union for, I believe it is the Georgia property, for a primary residence. But the caveat to those documents is that if both Cook in this case and the credit union agree that it can be used for a secondary home and not a primary residence, it's okay. Finally, the credit union itself furnished a loan estimate that shows the purpose of the loan was for a secondary home, not a primary residence. They've got absolutely nothing and never had anything.
I can't tell you how many times this has come up in elections, and I've never, ever, ever seen it amount to anything. But to hear that she never even bent the rules in the first place, this was all just the White House getting it wrong, is pretty spectacular.
Yep, that's what it looks like. Bill Pulte biting off more than he could chew. And I think he knew all this. He knew all this. He has the experience on the private side and also has the access for information now at the FHFA. They went on a witch hunt to get whatever they could against these people at the Federal Reserve. They know that people in the United States are doing this kind of loophole thing. They thought it'd be easy for them to pick it up. And all they got is this. And if they had something like this and other Fed governors or other Fed presidents, it would have come out. They don't. And this is all they got on Cook. And even that is not sticking because it's not true.
Now the question just becomes, will they do more of it because they didn't have to pay a political price for it? Or will they stop because it's not getting them anywhere? Time will tell.
I hope that she pursues any legal remedies available to her against Pulte personally or in his capacity at the FHFA. I really hope she does. And I'm glad she stuck up for herself on this issue and didn't just say, I don't need this bullshit. I'm going to resign.
And is it true that Pulte might already be in trouble for the exact same thing?
Yeah, so because he did this, it also seems that people started asking questions about people in his background. And it seems his parents in Michigan were doing this. Exactly what he's alleging. Doesn't seem like it's going to be rise to criminal, of course.
No.
But the Michigan municipality where the house is has since revoked the primary residence tax treatment. So this whole episode actually means that his parents' tax bills are going up.
Well, I really, really hope it dissuades them from doing this stuff in the future. This is so ridiculous.
It won't, because the payoff's too good. The payoff to get the attention of the president is too good. And there's no penalty for it. These guys can do or say all this stuff, and like, what's the repercussion? So what? So what? Cook sues the government for whatever reason, and she gets some money out of it. It's not coming out of Pulte's pocket.
And then, of course, you had the U.S. attorney resign who was trying to look into scrounging up the exact same case into Letitia James.
Really what is that? What is that? A U.S. attorney in Virginia? What does it have to do with her in New York?
Trump asked the DOJ to investigate Letitia James for mortgage fraud. This exact same primary
perfect.
resident.
Another one.
And he looked into it. He couldn't find anything. And he resigned because he said, there's nothing here. And then we had Trump posting on Truth Social, Pam Bondi, we can't wait anymore, start prosecuting my enemies. And now there's rumors today that the White House is freaking out because Trump thought he was texting that. And
I saw that.
check. And I think it's absolutely crazy to me because as I was looking into the Kimmel story, which I know I was a little surprised to hear you were even more charged up about than I was. As I was starting to look more into the Kimmel story and I was reading a lot of interviews with a lot of FCC experts and former officials, they were begging people to understand that this is not a one-time deal. The FCC has been pulling absolutely every lever they can to make broadcasters as miserable as possible. So they're doing this at the Fed. They're doing this to the New York AG. They're doing this to all the execs at all the networks because they're just trying to leverage as much control as possible. A lot of people are really upset about Kimmel. It's really scary for a lot of reasons. But to me, it feels like one of those classic Trump combos where it's both the dumbest thing he could do and the smartest thing he could do at the exact same moment. On the one hand, he's giving people permission to push back, but he's also extending the lifetime of this story. And I'm not sure which one's better for him. But Banker Bill, you're really upset about this because you don't think it makes dollars or cents. Why do you think the math just doesn't line up behind this?
Yeah, I was incensed by this. I'll tell you. I think this is a huge unforced error for Disney. Let me give you some background. Disney stock, okay? Disney owns ABC. They have Disney Plus, they have ESPN, they have Hulu, among a variety of other properties, including the theme parks we all know and love. That stock, Disney stock, has been dead money for 10 years and counting. Disney is part of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Over the last 10 years, Disney stock is up 13%, while the Dow Jones is up 180%. Over the last 5 years, Disney is down 12%. While the Dow Jones is up 65%. They've got Bob Iger as CEO right now. This is his second tour of duty. He, quote, retired. They brought in a guy, Bob Chapek, who was an internal hire, and he was so bad that they brought Iger back, that's the setup of where this stock is, where this company's at. Now, the late night segment is dying. It is not a good segment. It is contracting, okay? However, Jimmy Kimmel Live, that show, was the number one or number two property, depending on the rankings you look at, in that segment at 11:30 at night. So Kimmel says what he says. He doesn't violate any obvious FCC laws or regulations. The FCC chair then goes on some show, I don't even know whose show it was, on a podcast and says there's a strong case for actions against ABC and Disney and says, quote, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, which in and of itself to me is a statement of extortion. Then he refers that the FCC can do some things about ABC's license. Shortly after that, there was an announcement from Disney that the show gets pulled. Now, Disney's well within their right to pull that show. Disney is well within their right to fire Jimmy Kimmel if they want. They can. They can pay out his contract. They can put him on the bench and say goodbye. Thanks for the memories. However, Disney is in the entertainment business. And instead of leading into this opportunity in front of you, they cowered. The administration, the FCC chairman, the president of the United States served them up on a silver platter this threat of an FCC license being pulled. So what if the FCC pulls your license? So what if the broadcasters like Nexstar won't air your show? I said, Disney owns ESPN, Disney Plus, and Hulu apps. These third-party apps are not subject to the regulation of the FCC. And to the extent they would be, it is in the most narrow of ways, much narrower than what's on broadcast television. Okay, so the networks are now putting pressure on Disney, saying we're not going to air the show if you want to continue. Okay, fine. I have 185 million subscribers on Disney Plus and on Hulu that I could put the show on. And by the way, it's free speech month, so a month free on Jimmy Kimmel for anybody new that signs up. Instead, no. What did they do? They cowered. This is the latest evidence of Disney being terrible to its shareholders. This was a gift, a marketing gift, especially in the entertainment business, and they bungled it. Their show was number one or number two in the segment. The broadcaster or network gave him an out to put the show on Disney's own proprietary platforms, and they screwed it up. Why? Why? Because Bob Iger and Disney management are afraid of their license, or that their little merger or bolt-on acquisition for Fubo that is so puny you need to squint to make it look good won't get some DOJ approval? Let them. Mickey Mouse is victim, and you have the third-party platforms to capitalize on the moment. I'll go a step further. Jimmy Kimmel's on network TV. Put him on your app, slap a TV MA. You now have basically a Howard Stern version on your Disney Plus platform. What kind of shows have done great over the last 5 years? Barstool. Instead, they didn't capitalize on the moment. If this is the decision-making we can expect from people like Disney and the CEO there, Bob Iger, we all need to reconsider our investment in these companies, because if they are not acting in the best interest of the shareholder, we need to ask whose interest are they acting in. If I'm a large Disney shareholder, I'm pissed off that management missed this moment, and I'm quietly starting to raise the prospect of management turnover. The Bob Iger that ran ABC in the 1990s, or the Bob Iger you read about in his book, The Ride of a Lifetime, would not have done this. He would not have cowered. But I guess he's just the latest example of someone who has stuck around too long after losing his fastball and his hunger.
The only way I could possibly disagree with that immaculate take is, what if they turn it back on tomorrow?
They missed the moment already. They missed it. It doesn't change the fact that they're going to put the show back on in a dying segment. This was a way to take it off, to get it off, to put it on some new, your platform, yours, you own it. You now vertically integrate this show and reinvigorate it. And they screwed it up. The moment's passed.
Oh, I think the moment's got at least half a week more, maybe even a week. I think this moment is momentous. It will get dragged out slightly, but it might be gone by Wednesday. So it might be gone by the time this comes out.
Disney management completely screwed this up. Completely. And this is just the latest. It's been years of this.
The one thing I do want to push back a little bit on is, I do not think that ABC was at all worried about losing their license. I think, legally speaking, the FCC absolutely does not in any way, shape, or form have the ability to pull TV station licenses for content. Very explicitly, the regulations, the laws are set up so that the FCC is not able to censor people. I do think the other part of this, though, the Nexstar and the Sinclairs, that's the sinister part of this. The FCC commissioner led this attack on Kimmel. It was unbelievable how blatant it was, but the government powers that he has were not the ones that were able to take Kimmel down. It was the fact that these conglomerates of local stations, Sinclair and Nexstar, were willing to back up the threat. And this is a classic example of deregulation coming back to bite us. I mean, it always goes back to Reagan. Back then, there were really strict laws about how many TV stations you were allowed to own. Those laws are still around today, but they're so flimsy. There are so many exceptions. There are so many ways around them that now we have three conglomerates owning about 40% of all local stations. These are not mom and pop shops. These are not local people with local interests saying, in my neck of the woods, people don't want to hear Jimmy Kimmel say this. These are large corporations who are monopolizing this sector as much as the federal government will allow them to. And they're now wielding that economic monopolistic power as political leverage. I mean, this was an attack launched by the federal government, but the bombs were dropped by the corporations in a way that we have not seen coordinated in this country in forever. This is National Socialism, and this is deregulation. And I think the reason why I want to just really, really beat on that drum is because we are talking about broadcast television. We're talking about one of these classic markets that our system just does not know what to deal with. Broadcast television is profitable. It is also shrinking. We have seen peak broadcast television. And all of us know this. The only way that you can increase your share price as a broadcast television station is to loosen regulation and to own more of the pie and to be able to take advantage of the fact that there's less competition. There's no other way to grow. You and I, we all know that TV is not going to come back in a major way. So we need regulation to protect us from temptation. We know exactly how these things are going to break. We know exactly how they could lead us to political moments like these. But because 40 years ago, during the Reagan administration, TV station owners saw the writing on the wall and said, oh, come on, how bad could it be? 40 years later, Trump and the FCC are able to do this. They're able to censor people in a way that the founding fathers never would have thought possible when they fought the Revolutionary War. I mean, it's crazy how blatantly un-American, unconstitutional this is before you even get to the hypocrisy of the Tony Hinchcliffe Joe Rogan universe. I do think, though, politically, I do have some hope. And again, I think we're going to find out in the next couple of days here. We might find out this week whether Trump is pushing too hard or not. And I think that you are going to see the difference between the people who said, screw it, I'm going to vote Trump because Joe Rogan told me to, because I do not like the fact that institutions come down on people in ways that I don't feel are fair. And now they see another stand-up comedian get fired. A lot of people are going to get off the bus. The question is it enough people, and is it going to happen fast enough?
The specificity you give about the licenses and the power of the broadcasters, from my perspective, only augments my position that this was a mistake for Disney, that they were stupid, and that they cowered, and that they bungled the whole thing. So you're telling me that the FCC couldn't have pulled their license. Okay, fine. So that's moot. And then you're telling me that these broadcasters who already have too much power, one of them in Nexstar, gave Disney an out to take what is the number one or number two show in the segment off the platform, off the broadcaster's platform, and put it on their own, to which they have 185 million subscribers across Disney Plus and Hulu. And instead, you guys just took it off.
I want to put that into perspective real quick, right? This is how regulations live and die. Okay, so there's about 250 ABC affiliates in the United States. Sinclair is the largest owner. They own 38 of those. Nexstar owns 28.
Okay, that's a lot.
And I'm going to guess that they own some of the more premium ones. So the tip of the top, I think the top eight are probably owned by ABC themselves. And then the next best, I would expect the vast majority of them to be in these portfolios. So
Fine.
When back in the day when you couldn't own this many stations, the point was not that you could monopolize the market with these many numbers. I mean, this is far less than 50%. But the point is that back when those 250 stations had to be owned by 150 to 200 people, the opportunities to get everybody in the room to say, hey, we're going to cut into our bottom line for political reasons this month goes way down. But
sure.
When
Forced
you get
competition.
when you get it into the dozens, all of a sudden these things happen. So many times politicians and business people come to us with these cases of regulations where they're like, this is really annoying and it's inhibiting my growth. And they make very reasonable cases. But we need to start giving the other side of the argument some credence, because that's how this happens. For every major Trump constitutional disaster, somebody else had to deregulate something 40 years ago to tee it up.
I got a question for you. Just want your reaction to it. If the government can browbeat multi-billion-dollar international conglomerate Disney into pulling a TV show where the host kind of did what he should do, which is be provocative in entertainment, how strong are the corporations in the United States in not kowtowing to the executive?
No, that's a great question. And I think that's why what we're seeing here isn't traditional socialist censorship, and it's not traditional capitalist censorship like we're used to in this country, where it's driven by outrage. My bottom line is going to be affected by allowing this thing to be said on my platform. This is this is a secret third thing. This is National Socialism. This is the government making a threat and corporations who are politically aligned, not economically aligned, but politically aligned, backing that threat up with corporate action.
I agree. It is socialist. So it might even be that Disney's management is actually politically aligned with the administration, and this was an opportunity for them to pull the show.
Well, and I think that's an interesting conversation too, because you did.
That's not my base case. My base case is Disney's management's a bunch of cowards who couldn't manage their way out of a paper bag and are watching their stock and company flail.
And it's hard to disagree with that when you lay out the case that you do. But the interesting thing is we saw Disney lick this. We saw Disney go toe-to-toe with DeSantis. And
that is true. And won. That's true. That's true.
And so the question now becomes, why is this different? And if you think the FCC thing is ridiculous, like I do, because the FCC commissioner just doesn't have those powers. If you think the Fubo argument is ridiculous because that deal is
too small to matter,
then you have to think that there is at least some politics on this coming from Disney. And I don't think it's that Disney is run by Trumpies. I think it's that every CEO in this country have decided, I don't want to get every single one of my mortgages looked through to see if I did something a little bit wrong that can then get blown up to ruin my reputation or to drag me in court for 6 months just for the crime of doing my job. You know, I think they don't want to have to deal with that. They just want to ride this out. And I think that's the mistake. That's where we're ending up in a scenario that's the complete inverse of Trump 1.0, where in Trump 1.0, he had support from the people, but not from the institutions. Now we're seeing the exact opposite. The people have turned on Trump. He's never been less popular. He's the least popular president of all time. He's underwater on immigration and the economy, the two things that always kept him afloat. But the institutions don't want to get dragged in court for mortgage fraud. And so they're just going to put up with it for the next 3.5 years. And that's how they get you.
It's interesting. I see three groups of people emerging to speak out and put their name behind things they disagree with this administration. One are the asset managers. One of them is Citadel's Ken Griffin, who is a major Republican donor. The big bank CEOs, I've sent you several articles of them. And interestingly, is financial advisors. Everyone else is awfully quiet. Starting to see some whispers from farmers at certain town halls and this or that, but everybody else is whisper quiet. So maybe it really is the case that there's that many people who have so many skeletons in their closet that they're just going to lay low and hope that this rash of socialism rolls over the next 3.5 years.
I don't think it has to be that many skeletons.
I guess not. Look, Bob Iger's there for round 2. If this is what we're going to get out of Bob Iger, we don't need him. Pay somebody half as much to do the same shit. Thanks for the memories.
You're absolutely right. If DOJ officials are resigning because they can't find anything on Letitia James and Bob Iger is folding, what are we doing?
Is worth 9 figures. You're a coward. Get out.
Folding gets us to our next topic, and that's a federal shutdown. It feels like everybody in America right now wants the Democratic Party to shut down the government, to stand up to the Republicans in the House and Senate and to Trump and to say no more. And I just wanted to talk through the strategy here. Because simply shutting the government down to shut the government down as a show of force, I don't think that's going to cut it. And I'm worried the way the Democrats are framing this fight as being all about Obamacare, rural hospitals, and healthcare vouchers. I don't know if that's going to be enough. I quickly, Banker Bill, looked at the last 3 shutdowns. 2013, Republicans trigger a shutdown to lay a blow on Obamacare. The American people say, we don't like Obamacare yet, but it's not worth shutting the government down over. 2018, Democrats start a shutdown over DACA, and the Americans say, we actually like Dreamers, but it's not worth shutting the government down over. And then in 2018, 2019, at the end of that year, Trump shuts down the government because of the border wall, and the Democrats say, no, let's open it back up again, and the Americans agree. So I'm worried that as we go into this shutdown, if we're saying to the American people, we want to make sure that Obamacare survives, that the Medicaid funding and vouchers that were taken out by the big, beautiful bill get refunded, and that we can keep these rural hospitals open. Do I think the American people, after week 1, after week 2, after week 3, are going to say that's worth the government being shut down? I'm worried that we're not framing this fight in a way that the Democrats can win.
Economically, I don't see much of a risk to this, depending on who you ask, whether it's Goldman, Peterson Institute, I think had one. Yale Budget Lab is another one. It's a 0.2 to a 0.4 impact to GDP. Current GDP is running at about 1.6 to 1.8% after inflation. And then the key thing is, if the drag happens of, let's say, 0.3% in the middle of the 0.2 and 0.4, you get all that back when the government reopens, because the government ultimately pays everybody back, the furloughed workers, everybody else. So it winds up being a wash economically. Is there a cost to the government? Sure. It's the opportunity cost, where the government basically back pays people for work that nobody did. This is very different from a debt ceiling fight. The debt ceiling was raised with the big, beautiful bill by $5 trillion to 40-some trillion. And the current debt is like 37 trillion. And we're spending about a $2 trillion deficit. So it'll take a few years in order to have another debt limit conversation. But the debt limit matters more than these kind of government shutdowns, because in a debt limit conversation, if you actually do hit the debt limit and you don't have approval to issue more, that would impair Medicaid, Medicare, IRS, veterans benefits, potentially interest payments. That would actually hinder money from flowing. So it's a very different circumstance economically.
There is one question I want to ask about that, and that's about paying everybody back. I think everybody's taking it for granted that that's the most likely scenario, but Trump does not follow precedent, and he doesn't care if people get hurt. If Trump decides that he doesn't want to pay people back, potentially as a way of punishing the Democrats for doing this in the first place, would that make the economic impact more significant?
It would, sure. But then you tell me, he'd be self-owning. He's taking away a wing from himself. So there's precedent to pay everybody back. He has the opportunity to do it and then doesn't. And I agree with you. The risk is probably underpriced in the market, but the stock market generally doesn't care about these things. I looked up what happens in the wake of a government shutdown. Half the time the market's up, half the time it's down. And I think it's because, people know that the government's going to make good. Now, what you're saying, if established precedent breaks, sure, that's a negative, but I would expect that there would be blowback against the administration in that case for deviating from the precedent.
I don't think it's going to be popular, but I don't think it's going to be unpopular enough. I think people don't like the Doge cuts. They're really unpopular, but it's not.
So just go back to 2018, the 2018 to 2019, the 35-day one. At that time, there were 2.8 million federal workers. 380,000 of them got furloughed, so over 10%. And the cost to the government was $5 billion. So if you shut it down again for 35 days, we have more deficits than we do now. Say it's $7.5 billion. He's just going to keep the money, further make the government smaller, not invite people back, keep them on furlough, fire them, release them from duty, and then what? Just continue to run the government on shoestrings, rubber bands, and bubblegum?
When you put it like that, I think it's 100% going to happen, because that's how Trump's been running everything this entire administration.
But at the same time, you as a Democratic strategist, what do you and your party have to lose? Your party as a generic Democrat, I've seen polling at 10 to 20%. What do you got to lose?
The American people don't like the government being shut down.
No, who would? I don't, right?
And is such a traditional gambit going to be enough of a justification to keep the government shut down unless we all get what we want? There is a threshold of patience there. And is it 3 days? Is it 3 weeks? Is it 3 months? I don't think it's 3 months. And I actually kind of don't think it's even 3 weeks. When you look at the 2018 shutdown, what ended that shutdown, that was the pilots and the flight attendants and the airport security staff. LaGuardia had a ground stop because they couldn't get enough people there. There were days when 50% of TSA was calling in sick. It got so bad that all of the flight attendant, traffic control, pilot unions, they all got together and issued a statement that said, we cannot even calculate the level of risk currently at play. Basically, they said that airplanes were going to start falling out of the sky if the shutdown went into week 4. But again, what are the Democrats telling the American people we're shutting the government down over? Is it to keep rural hospitals open, a very milquetoast traditional Democratic gambit that's worked and failed so many times? Or, they could say that Trump needs to stop doing the tariff stuff, that Congress needs to retake the tariff power so that prices can start coming down again. I think the Democrats need to show some backbone. The Democrats need to do something dramatic. The Democrats need to do this shutdown. Everybody agrees on this. But I think that we need to do a better job of defining the battlefield and of giving ourselves a win here. Because I think what Chuck Schumer is hoping is that Trump caves and immediately gives us some sort of health care, and Schumer can say, finally, I made Trump bleed. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that Trump is going to drag this out as much as possible, and that the Democrats are eventually going to get blamed because they're going to look like the ones that aren't as badass, aren't as sweet, aren't as calm, cool, and collected doing it.
So in early August, we talked about this, and there were a couple people I listened to. They had the risk of a government shutdown in early August at like 25%. And I raised it to you, and you just on an aside said, I don't know what it is, but I think it's higher than that. Where are you now?
It feels like it's at 95% right now.
Really?
A lot of people are now saying the only one who can stop it is Trump. And so if the only one who can stop it is Trump, is he going to sit down with Democratic leadership and negotiate with them? I'm not going to say it's never going to happen, but it might happen a lot faster if Chuck Schumer said this government stays closed until you release the Epstein files, as opposed to
I think that's the shame of it. That's where I saw it. I think for the Democrats to be successful, you got to go for those issues that I don't think actually matter. But I think it's going to be very hard. I mean, you have your established precedent that you laid out, that basically whoever starts it winds up eating it. You need to do what Republicans or people in Trump's orbit have been doing for a while and disregard what's important and instead only cater to what's popular.
I think that's a little bit cynical.
Me cynical? No way.
I think we need to find the sweet spot between legitimately important, emotionally charging, and where we can hand people a win. It's all about that Goldilocks zone. I think the Epstein files do really, really matter. Do they matter more than getting grocery prices down?
You're going to shut the government down over what may or may not be in some exhibits from a dead financier?
I think that's the way that a rational person sitting down, doing their homework, thinking it through thinks about it. And I think that's a very rational way of thinking about it. But the other side of that coin, you want to tell me that there's a credible accusation that the president of the United States was an active participant in the most notorious pedophilia ring of my lifetime, and we're not doing everything to get to the bottom of it? That's not an unserious thought. That's
not at all. I just can't tell you if it's going to resonate or not.
Democrats are admitting to themselves, finally, it's time to take off the gloves and take some big swings. But if that's going to be the case, then we need to make some big swing demands. This is an incredibly high difficult maneuver, and Democrats need to be prepared that if this goes on for 3 weeks, that they better have a damn good case to the American people why it's worth it, especially if the flights start getting delayed.
From a game theory standpoint, these are many, many shot games. But from where you guys are now, it's hard for me to see what you guys have to lose. I'm thinking much bigger. Like, suppose that Democrats decide, to really stick it out, and this goes on 90 days.
The Democrats need to do this. I'm not saying they don't need to do this. I'm just saying that if we're going to take a risk, let's be really smart about it. And unfortunately, I don't think that healthcare vouchers are good enough. I would agree. I think that if we're going to go whole hog in this regard, then we need to make a really, really compelling case to the American people. And the current case that the Democrats are making is clearly designed to try to give Trump an out.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. If you tie it to a popular issue like Epstein and issues that may matter, like ICE raids and tariffs, like I said, you're talking about 3 weeks. Suppose it's 3 months. What does that look like? I think if you're telling me that the Democratic Party is serious, you need to think much bigger than 21 days, because 21 days for for Trump is not a whole lot of time.
The question becomes, how badly does Trump want to keep the government open, even if it means giving Democrats a win? What are Trump's incentives here? And if shutting the government down keeps all essential services open, but means there's less oversight of his authoritarian stuff, but he still gets to do the authoritarian stuff, and the Democrats look like they're screwing this up, why does he want to open the government?
I'm just saying, I don't know if there's a whole lot of economic impact to it. So your risk is mitigated in that circumstance. And there's plenty of polling that you've shared with me, public stuff that you've shared to me that says people want a Democrat that has, quote, backbone or, quote, morals or will stand up for people.
Right.
Here's an opportunity, right?
Well, right. But that's not good enough, right? Shutting down the government is not the win.
And you're saying the win is something like Epstein files, reduction of tariffs or elimination thereof, et cetera.
The Democrats can force Americans to wake up every morning and go, air travel got just a little bit shittier today because President Trump refuses to drop the tariffs even though grocery prices keep rising. I think that's something that hurts Trump. But if it's every day, the Democrats still won't fund the government, something Obamacare, that's going to get old real quick. It's not going to be, oh, look how brave the Democrats are. Oh, the Democrats are finally showing some backbone. But, oh my God, the Democrats are screwing this up again. Look how pathetic this is.
Sure. In the words of Nas, you need a mass appeal. So the drop dead date on this right now is September 30th. There's 12 full year appropriations bills that require approval. 0 have been approved by Congress as of now, September 21st.
And I've been saying for the last few episodes that Trump's political capital has already peaked.
I think that was a great call by you. I didn't really appreciate that. I didn't really agree with it either. And it seems like you've been right.
And the other thing I want to put on everybody's radar is if you're in my neck of the woods, election season is in full swing. Virginia, along with New Jersey, of course, is an off-year state. They have their governor and their AG and all those races happening right now. Early voting started last week. And Virginia is, of course, a state that would be really dramatically affected by a government shutdown, a state that's already very energized around the DOGE cuts and where Democrats are expected to really do well. And that sets the tone for the midterms. If this shutdown means that Democrats overperform in Virginia, on the one hand, that means that folks like me got to be careful not to be over optimistic going into the midterms. But at the same time, that momentum is important. That gives grassroots donors the confidence they need to invest in the midterms early. That gives Democrats lessons to learn on what's working. And that means that Republicans are on the back foot because they finally will be handed a massive display of how unpopular they are, which is what we've seen in all these special elections. That's just all to say. I think the shutdown could absolutely really, really hurt Trump, but I think the Democrats just need a strategy, just need to think through on day 14 when it's getting a little long in the tooth, how are they going to sell it to the American people after the novelty of them having the backbone to actually shut down the government wears off? Thank you so much for listening to Is It Bad for the Economy? Thank you so much for all of your kind words, your kind reviews. Please, please, please give us those 5 stars. We are trying desperately to grow this fan base, and the easiest way that you can help us do that is by sharing this podcast with your friends and family, like so many of you already have. Thank you so much for your support, and we can't wait to talk to you in 2 weeks.
Thanks.
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition. It takes a little time